Welcome to the Wildside Extreme News Adventure team, and thank you very much for joining us. Today we're on day 3 of our absolutely extraordinary Wellington tour, and we've been invited to come down to Wētā Workshop into the heart of Mordor to meet a very, very extraordinary man. Richard Taylor, one of the original founders of this incredible creative workshop, has invited us to come and talk with him, not just about the work which he's doing today, but most importantly about his journey, his inspirations, and his personal heroes that have inspired him to create a truly extraordinary career.
Moment in our lives.
Yeah,
I agree.
It was just tremendous.
Yeah,
it really was.
I put it up there with, Roy Batty's delivery of a line.
Oh,
and
Roy Batty's delivery of, if you could see what I have seen. One of the great, but I heard that on that moment he actually just made it up very quickly.
Yeah, well, the daylight was coming up and so on.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
I was a massive influence by that movie. In fact, my wife and I flew to England a little while after the movie, and we went to Hartlepool, or Redcar, where Ridley Scott was born, and then went to Middlesbrough, which inspired the big burning opening scene. And then we went up to Newcastle, which inspired the rooftop scenes. And tried to follow.
You've actually been to the original
places that inspired him, yeah.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, and then about 3 years ago, he visited our workshop. I was at a party in LA and he was there, and I wasn't brave enough to go and say hello. But then he came to the workshop and spent 2 days in discussions about a movie with us. And I got to spend some really amazing time with him and told him about the journey my wife and I went on to try and soak up the influence of what caused him to be who he was, and that movie to be what it was and why it was so important to us. So.
There was certain key films in the 80s, sort of the late 70s and especially in the 80s, that they had so much more than just, they had a real heart to them. And just as much as with the work that's created by Wingnut and Wētā has got a very special heart, Ridley Scott, his work is quite unique and authentic in its own right too. And it really stands out quite a lot from everybody else. And there's very few, but there's certain key people which have really embodied that sort of passion in their work, and it's so noticeable.
Yeah, and I'd argue that his brother, Tony Scott, it's Tony, isn't it, had the same qualities within it. The Hunger, I think, is one of the most stylish and beautiful movies.
David Bowie.
Yeah, and Catherine Deneuve. That is one of the, go back and watch that. It is a timeless film. It is so, remember Bauhaus does the opening song, Bela Lugosi's Dead, and seminal movie as well. That was by his brother, and just extraordinary.
The thing that amazed me is a lot of these movies, they were actually created, the really inspirational ones, the ones that inspired us, were sort of created in the late 70s, the 80s, sort of maybe a little bit of the early 90s. And there's sort of a magic period where, there were certain key films that came out that really inspired everything that's come afterwards. Really has.
My wife Tanya and I now have a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old. And one of the most enjoyable thing about having children is going back and watching the films that you fell in love with through that period. And obviously as they age up that little bit more and that little bit more, you can show them more and more of the things that you were watching. And so we've watched things like The Goonies and Stand By Me and these early,
The Goonies was
highly
incredible
films.
Indeed.
Just one of the most extraordinary movies. Share that with my children and then have them get something amazing out of it. Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, sharing those with the kids.
The first time I saw The Labyrinth, it just blew my mind apart. I loved everything about it, the music, the setting, all of the creatures, you know, the monsters, it was wonderful.
I'd never seen something that was so immersive. It was a world that was fully painted into all the corners of the frame.
It just boggled the mind. I ran out of the cinema and I just wanted to yell for everyone to come and see it. You couldn't have imagined how overwhelmingly exciting it was.
Jim Henson was vastly influential to my entire generation. He created work that we had never seen before. It was so outside of the box, so unlike anything else that was imaginable. It literally held that standard for 3 decades.
It's hard to actually express strongly enough how fanatical I am about this film and of course the work of this great man. Therefore, a chance to create the collectibles of Labyrinth is a bit of a career highlight and something I'm almost giddy about.
There are some IPs that are sort of sacred, and the Labyrinth is certainly one of those, and we've got some super fans here. So to actually get to work on Labyrinth was both like a massive privilege, but also really scary and daunting, wanting to do this, you know, wonderful IP justice.
It was really fun doing these collectibles within our workshop because we have so many fans roaming the corridors at all times. So people would pop in and say, oh, that's my favorite character, or I love this part of the movie. And it was really nice to feel that energy and that fandom from within our building, and it was quite inspiring.
When you come to sculpt collectibles of the quintessential characters, it makes for a very fun and interesting debate. So Didymus and Ambrosius, of course, came out pretty high up on the list. His character-filled delivery, his chivalry, his bravery, and the way he rides around on his dog Ambrosius just makes him so endearing to people. And Jane Wenley did such a beautiful job. The detail, the fineness, the character, the richness of him is captured in this piece.
So Didymus is just so intense. He's such a full-on character. He's always up at level 10. He's always just really upright and big mouth and big eyes, intense voice. So I tried to convey that in the sculpt. Ambrosius was an interesting one because sometimes Ambrosius is a puppet and sometimes it's obviously a real dog. And so we had to think about which we'll be sculpting. So in the end, we went for a blend of the two, and hopefully we can capture the character in a way that the fans remember Ambrosius.
Hello Worm's got a lot to answer for. If it wasn't for Hello Worm, it wouldn't have gone pear-shaped for Sarah as badly as it did. So it was without question that it had to be part of our range. And Kim, one of our sculptors, did an absolutely beautiful job capturing this quirky little character.
When we translated Jim Henson's work into sculpture, because of that super tight detail, it was actually quite hard. When you're sculpting, you can make it look like the actual thing, but you also have to make it feel like the actual thing. And the yellow worm was warm and welcoming, and so I had to tweak the forms into a round cherubicness throughout. And once that started to undulate across the surface, the sculpture snapped into emotional focus.
It's very important that we find the very heart of what we love about the characters in this movie. And I feel confident that the time, the effort, the design, the conversations, the debate, the sculpting endeavour that has been poured into these beautiful collectibles will be respected by the fans of this film and hopefully enjoyed for years and years to come. When I watched Labyrinth, it really touched me because obviously there was the wild and incredible menagerie of characters, and there was this insane world and the richness and the depth of invention and so on. But it was really the underlying point that Jim Henson was sharing with our audience, that there's a little bit of Sarah in all of us, and it's okay to get lost in your own fantasies, and it's great to have a wild and wonderful imagination, but just stay connected to the things that are real and the things that are important, and they can exist in harmony together and make your life far richer than if you didn't have it at all.
Dark Crystal was amazing.
It
was back in the day. And this is what I mean. There was this whole body of work that was created, throughout that time period. And there's, a lot of the films that you've mentioned, and there was something beyond extraordinary about them. They were more than the sum of their parts.
Yeah, they stuck as well. Like, movies today are extraordinary and incredible, but they're coming at such a rapid fire nature, and they're all so phenomenal in their technical execution that none of them really stick with you. That's a grand statement, because some obviously do. I'm a huge Miyazaki fan, and every new Miyazaki movie that comes out has a seminal moment in my sort of film-going existence. But back then, those movies sat with you, and like, you carry them through to today, just like the music of that period. Maybe the kids of today, 30 years from now, will talk about the movies they watch today, but I don't think so. Somehow they registered on your sort of geek radar to such a degree that they influenced you.
And that pop culture, and it's something that's very special to be part of. And as you say, it's always evolving and it's always changing. It's always different. As you say, people will look back and obviously, remember their time very fondly. But I feel quite blessed to have been born at the time I was, just at the beginning, pretty much when Star Wars, I still remember when Star Wars first got released, the whole cinema was sold out and we had to sit on the steps to watch it, and it was the first time we'd seen this.
Great, yeah.
And it was a very, very, very powerful moment. And it was unlike anything we'd seen before, and then how it evolved from there. but there was something authentic about the originals that, you know.
And don't you feel ownership over it today, as if you were part of the creation of it because you were there at the beginning?
Indeed.
Like Thunderbirds, we make a reimagining of the Thunderbirds through Pukeko Pictures. But because I was alive when it was first on telly, and I used to watch it on our black and white TV in Cheshire, England, I somehow feel like I was part of the DNA of the show, even though I wasn't. I couldn't be further removed from those people making it. But for some reason, I carried it right through my life, that it touched me in such a special way that somehow, surely I was part of it. And so to get an opportunity to actually be part of a team recreating it is, you know, boyhood dreams come alive at the most incredible level.
Very much so. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, you know, there was that connection. What we also tried to do as well is there was such sort of, you know, had such a powerful effect on us that we would then try and find artifacts or parts of the movie and then collect those, because then we would actually have part of that we actually connected with. And certainly not to the degree of your collection here, but, you know, throughout our offices we've got original bugs from The Matrix, and I've got one of the original Wonka golden tickets. So I was quite distraught because I really wanted to interview Gene Wilder. So when he passed away, that was very sad.
Understood. Yeah, the way, you know, people ask me to explain what on earth are these about and why do we make collectibles, and the best way I've thought to put it is that a movie is a quickly fading memory. You step out of the cinema and it may have had an imprint on you, but the visual imagery, of course, fades in your mind because other things are adding into your life. A collectible is a permanent reminder of that moment that you enjoyed in the cinema. I look at the film-based collectibles, you know, there's a great one there. This was a very cheap money box that I bought in China, as you can see there. But of course, it reminds you of one of the great animated movies of all time. And every time I look at it, it's a beautiful thing to trigger. You know, Porco Rosso is my favorite film of all time.
That was actually the name of the film?
Yeah, Porco Rosso, the pink pig. This is, or the red pig. This is a Miyazaki movie, and something. I've got a lot of Porco Rosso collectibles. Nausicaa Valley of the Wind is my son's, and there's a beautiful Nausicaa.
It's funny, the generations before us, they sort of collected more traditional art. They collected more sort of art and sculptures from the classics or the masters.
Yeah, maybe things more like this, you know, bronzes and so on.
And whereas in our generation, because we were so inspired by these movies as children, this is our art form, and popular culture, you know, is essentially, you know, the art form for our generation. And so to be able to embrace that, and to be able to become part of it.
At the end of the day, people would argue, well, these are cheap trinkets that sit on your mantelpiece collecting dust, but they're affordable sculpture of beautiful objects. And every one of them is, you know, an exquisite capturing of something that was important to you. And
just spotted something which is quite amazing. Hammerstein from the ABC Warriors from 2000 AD.
Yeah, I was spotted. That comic book was
Tremendous comic book.
so impacting on me. The first portal for me into a fantasy world, because we moved to New Zealand when I was 4, and we moved out into a small country district called Tihihi, really an intersection on a road going down to a psychiatric hospital. And we moved into a sharemilker's cottage, even though my parents weren't farmers. We lived in the sharemilker's cottage. And I bought when I was about 9 or 10, I bought a dog-eared print of the triptych of the Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch, and I hung it above my bed. And I would argue that Hieronymus Bosch is the first great fantasy artist. Of course, he was painting biblical metaphor and inspired by the demons and the stories of creation in his head, but to me, this was a fantasy world of incredible inventiveness. And then it was Roger Dean, getting a book of Roger Dean's work, and then I discovered 2000 AD. Issue number 1 came into the barber's
Issue
shop.
1, that's incredible.
I know, and I bought it and started collecting it. And of course, these characters, you can see there's Judge Anderson.
Judge Anderson from the Side Division.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah. Judge Death. And there's Judge Dredd, of course. And these characters entered my life and just sprung forth. I've always said, if you're growing up without the ability to buy a blister pack toy from the corner store, well, then you better well invent it with your mind. You know, if you've got these fantasies in your head and you can't purchase it pre-packed, then you're going to have to create it yourself. And these things, Hieronymus Bosch, Roger Dean, 2000 AD, Thunderbirds, these were trigger points that just sparked the imagination.
Completely.
Yeah.
2000 AD had a huge impact growing up. I mean, it was a time where nowadays when you look at the comics, it's all sort of colourful and digital, but back in the day it was black ink. And the ability that they had, or the skill that they had artistically with black ink to actually create these storyboards. Especially for Judge Dredd, if you remember the Midnight Surfer. And the White Werewolves.
Great. Jigsaw people, remember that?
Yes. And then there was the overweight people with wheels under their tummies, and the imagination and the world that they created was just tremendous.
Yeah, I love Strontium Dogs. Can you remember
Strontium
that was
Dog,
one of the
I
great
do.
ones. And if you remember, there was that wonderful 2-page.
Is it the biochips for the hat, the gun, and the backpack, I think, wasn't it?
was a lot of future thinking in it.
Incredible. I mean, creatively and conceptually, there was so much thought that went into it. And I think that depth is what's so inspiring. It wasn't just a picture. They created an entire universe around it, and behaviours and characteristics. And that's what made it so real, and why I think that, you know, we connected with it as much as we did. But 2000 AD is fantastic that you were a fan of that too.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people nowadays, if you mention it, they might not know it.
New Zealand, because we're part of the Commonwealth, the things that did get over here are early British television, of course, one TV channel, so you consume anything, and almost all of it was British made. And then something like 2000 AD, if it turned up, almost all the kids knew of it. So you used to socialise around your love of the stuff, and you'd yak about it, and oh, fabulous, fabulous. And as you can see by just the surroundings you're sitting in the workshop you're about to experience, it all rubbed off on us all. And,
it has.
Yeah.
And I mean, and some people that maybe sort of don't appreciate this art form, they sort of call us geeks. But I actually think that it's a great word, because essentially it describes us, and essentially, you know, that we appreciate pop culture and essentially all of the art forms and the stories that have essentially been created for us to be able to enjoy, and they've essentially become part of who we are. I mean, this is one of the amazing things with the Wild Side is that we were inspired by these people, these artists, these creatives, these filmmakers, you know, growing up, and then the opportunity to actually meet with them and connect with them, and whereas before we used to sort of get artifacts from films, to be able to actually meet the real people.
I know the memories from meeting these people was one of the great blessings of our career, that these people have come through our lives. You know, Christopher Lee stepped through our door once and
You've
spent
had Christopher
a year.
Lee here.
Well, of course, on Lord of the Rings, we worked with him extensively. We've had just these extraordinary people. When we won the first Oscars, sadly my wife was pregnant with our first child, so my mum and I went to the Oscars, and I collected these Oscars for our staff back home. And when I got home, I wanted to give everyone a special present as a congratulations. And you know, you can buy a leather jacket or you can throw a big party, but we're doing those things at the end of movies. And I thought, what really special thing could we do? Well, when Tanya and I were 25 years old, I wrote to Ray Harryhausen and his wife.
Because didn't he make all of the stop motion miniatures?
Yeah, correct.
Clash of the Titans.
Correct, yeah.
And I still remember going and watching the original Clash of the Titans at the cinema.
Yeah, well, he was hugely influential on me, so I wrote to him and asked if we could come and visit him. So we went to the UK, we arrived an hour early, we were so nervous, we sat on his front doorstep for an hour. We'd bought a bunch of flowers, knocked on the door at 9 o'clock, as per the agreed time, and a woman answered the door, and we naturally thought it was his wife. The concept of housekeepers were totally beyond us. And my wife handed Mrs. Harryhausen this bunch of flowers. It turned out to be the housekeeper, and Ray had totally forgotten we were coming. So 10 minutes later, he comes down this huge set of wooden stairs in his pajamas.
Fantastic. Great things have been created in pajamas,
and greeted
I've always
us.
said.
So this stuck in my mind. We ended up spending the whole day with him and Diana, and it was the most incredible day, and I'd like to think we made friends. Jump forward along many, many years, and we're home with the Oscars, and what present can we give our staff? And what we did is we invited the Harryhausens to come and spend 2 weeks with us, and Ray and Diana spent 2 weeks in the workshop hanging out with our staff. Ray ended up on the last night, Ray did a 5-hour talk in our cinema to our staff, and you know, he was, I think, 81 at the time, and
because he would have been the pioneer of essentially, you know, all of this sort of work. I mean,
well, Willis O'Brien and Marcel Delgado were his mentors. And he started working on, I think, Mighty Joe Young with Willis O'Brien, and he really carried the mantle over from Obie, as he was known, from Obie's work on into being the pioneer of visual effects creature work. Of course, there's great makeup artists that pioneered that. So when we were fortunate to collect the second Oscars, I invited Dick Smith, the great makeup artist, if he would come out, and he came and spent 2 weeks with us. living down here in this, we're relatively isolated from the centre of the world's film industry, having the chance to bring these great people down had an incredible impact on us. Do you remember those, Steve? Remember when we brought those people down?
Absolutely, yeah.
Weren't they special? And they were so generous, and they equally were thrilled that we would give, you know, show such adoration. And Ray, who had done everything through stop animation, got to discover digital animation for the first time here. And
Oh, wow.
Wētā Digital staff put on lessons for him and showed him how to do digital animation.
Did he do in the beginning, was he, because I remember the classic film, I think it might have been one of the first sort of, but The Voyage of Sinbad? You remember?
He did multiple films.
And there was basically
The great tentacled octopus creature.
And the skeletons, like bringing skeletons to life.
Yeah. And he did Guanji with the big dinosaur. Yeah, the skeletons is recognised as his most complex animation, but
because I mean, if I remember in Clash of the Titans, and I still remember so well going to the Odeon Theatre in England, just similar to Star Wars when Clash of the Titans first came out, people were like, "Wow!"
Yeah, it was groundbreaking stuff.
It was. It was.
It was incredible.
Hi Richard, Vanessa here. I was looking again at the photos of Dad and Mum's visit to New Zealand with yourself and Tanya, and the pictures of where you're standing in front of the trolls. Dad and Mum always spoke so fondly of their trip and visit with meeting the Wētā Workshop folk. All the pictures are lovely. I'm looking through them again, and you guys are in one of the workshops with Mum, Dad and yourself, and then the one with the trolls, and then the lovely ones with Randy with the skeleton in front. And loved the picture of Dad, Mum standing on the glacier. That was great fun. Dad just loved it, and so did Mum. It was a very, very special, unique trip. So thank you all very, very much. I just want to say thanks, Richard, and everybody else for keeping Dad's memory alive and all his wonderful films. And I know if he was here today, he'd be so stoked that his memory has lived on this long. Thank you again for your support, and it really means a lot.
Peter Jackson is an incredible enthusiast for Ray's work and Willis O'Brien's work, and has some of the original armatures, so it makes a huge opportunity for us when we get the chance to go actually and see this original work and how incredibly well it was executed. Nothing is shonky. Of course, it's all done at the highest level of engineering and beautiful sculpting and so on. So very, very impressive and very inspiring.
For us to actually be able to meet these people, and as you say, I mean, because your careers and, you know, Wētā has got to such a level, some of the people that you would meet, you know, who are essentially the pioneers of the industry, and you'd have to be a chance to meet them on a very authentic and a very genuine level is really quite a privilege.
Yeah, I agree. I actually feel very fortunate that as New Zealanders, we're not starstruck. Maybe people aren't in the world, but there's not that Hollywood fandom feeling here. And so when these people of significance come to our building, or even come to New Zealand as a whole, I think they thoroughly enjoy the fact that they're having conversations and interactions at a very one-on-one level without that sense of giddy starstruck quality.
Very sort of authentic and very real.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, the opportunity to actually connect with people on that level, and I know for the Wild Side, the opportunity for us to actually be able to meet, and on a very genuine and authentic level, a wide variety of people. A lot of them are in the movie industry or in different ways, not so much the actors, but more the real people, the production crew, the directors, the stunt people, the real people that actually made it happen. And to actually have a chance to actually meet and to actually be able to hear the stories and you know, from all of these people is
you're
true.
very fortunate. That
we
is
are
fabulous.
blessed, indeed.
One of our great moments in my sort of career with respect to meeting these people, we took Christopher Lee and his wife Geeta out for dinner, and we went just to a local restaurant.
Go to dinner with Christopher Lee, that is incredible, that really is.
It was myself and Tanya and probably 10 of our staff that have got to know Christopher well. And at some point through the meal, and we sat him at the head of this long table, and it was a a modest restaurant in town overlooking the water. He started to regale us with stories of his life. People were asking him questions. And he had this most extraordinary booming voice. He could sing opera, he could speak in multiple languages. So he had this huge presence, and he started telling this story. And I'm sort of riveted by these stories. And at some point in the dinner, I hear this, someone clear their throat. And I turn around like this, and the whole restaurant had got up and gathered around the table, leaving their meals. And people are just sitting there, standing there, listening to Chris's incredible stories of his life. And I thought, God, to have this, the presence to pull people like that to the magnet of your life.
And this is, I mean, meeting extraordinary people like that, once you actually sort of connect with them, there's an energy that comes from that really lifts up and empowers and inspires people. And I think at the heart of what we do with the Wildside team, it's about us actually being able to actually connect with, you know, these sorts of extraordinary people and telling their stories so that everyday people can understand that we're still human beings, there's still 24 hours in a day, we still have to eat, we still have to sleep, we still have to go to the bathroom. So, you know, so what is it that makes the difference? And as we mentioned before, it is passion, it is purpose. Once you find your passion and your purpose, and it's a bit of a journey to actually go on, then you reach a point where you become unstoppable. And as we were saying before, you don't have to try and start, it's a matter of trying to stop. And it's people like, you know, we've been talking about, and especially people like Christopher Lee, and you're included in this as well, Richard, that help actually inspire that journey, you know, for us. And I think that the role models and the heroes that we have in our lives, I think it's really, really, really important. And I think that, you know, from what I've seen, especially in, you know, sort of the later years, some of the role models that the later generation have chosen to emulate is maybe, you know, not quite the same. Whereas some of the greats that we've been discussing, they've inspired generations.
Yeah, they have. And, you know, as I was talking before the camera started rolling, I have pictures of my role models sitting on the shelf behind me because they're important to me.
Very much so.
You know, the Derek Meddings, the Takia, Professor Zhao Sutong and others that have been inspiring to me, even if I may not have met them or have come to meet them in my later life. So it is critical. Yeah.
It is. And as I say, I mean, you know, sort of, if we sort of, you know, drill that right down, those inspirational people, I think that, you know, essentially it's very, very important as we go through our life that we actually have a chance to actually meet and actually hear the stories of these people. Occasionally, if we actually get a chance to actually meet them in person, it can have a profoundly positive effect on our lives. Yeah. And I think that's what, at the heart of the Wild Side, we get a chance to profile, you know, a lot of extraordinary things, but it's the people and their stories and their journey and their wisdom that really is at the heart of what we do.
You mentioned passion. People ask me, well, surely it's talent that gets you in the door here, that wins you the job, and of course it isn't.
Talent can be developed. Passion has to be there.
Yes, exactly. It's a cliche, I know, but in order of importance, we hire passion, what's in your heart, enthusiasm, the ability to turn that passion into an action, and then tenacity. It's no good being passionate and enthusiastic in our business if you don't have stickability.
Yeah.
But once you have those three, talent can follow. And
Definitely.
in our world here, using our team leaders, you can inspire talent in someone that doesn't yet possess it. But I consider everything leads back to Beatrix Potter, because it's all about being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. You interview a young person, and it's as simple as how they may engage with you, the sparkle in their eye, their need to actually leave your eye to look around the room at the things in the room. Can we split the world into two distinctly different types of people? Those that look at the world to navigate through it so they don't trip, they don't bang their head, or those that observe the world. And I'd suggest that maybe less than 10% of the world are observers, people that actually will pick something up and be fascinated by the object. And I'd like to think that at the heart of what you called the geek, the lover of pop culture, is people that love to observe things. The subtleties, the oddities of life that come through popular culture, and that brings another level outside of the ordinary life. It brings the surreal to your real. And I love the fact that we get to associate and interact through things like Comic Cons, the fan groups we meet with these people that they're almost oscillating with their love and enjoyment, their passion and enthusiasm for this whole nother tier of life that most people aren't even existing in.
And they draw an energy out of all of that art form and everything as well. It's, you know, and I think that energy that they draw, some people will say, oh, that's a toy, and they'll walk past it and they miss everything about what it is. They miss everything. Yeah. But, you know, us geeks, and I see it as a positive word, because as you say, you know, we're basically sort of the children of pop culture. We draw an energy from that, and it lights our life up and it inspires us. And I think that's why it's grown so much over the last little while.
We're obviously getting the word.
Indeed, indeed. I could obviously talk with you for 5 hours quite easily, Richard, and I'm sure
you're extraordinary. I can see why you do this job, because
it's my life.
Yeah, you draw out of.
And I own a brand agency. That's how, you know, essentially I make my living. I do business marketing for corporate companies. The wild side is my passion. And
wow,
I've dedicated
really? This is your thing, the wild. Wow.
It's my life. I am a chronicler of other people's lives. That is my purpose.
Because if it's not captured, these people pass away and it's gone.
Exactly. Yeah. What I find with extraordinary people, once they've reached a certain level, they're extremely kind but very humble.
Yeah.
They will never tell their own story, but everyone's life deserves to be told. Everyone's life needs to be told, and so as a chronicler of people's lives, that is my purpose. And so I've basically dedicated my entire life to building the wild side.
And what I love from what you've said today is that, like, the press are constantly seeking the stories from the A-listers. But the A-listers can only do their job because there is another echelon of achievers
people
below them.
Underneath that.
They're the fascinating people. It's not that the A-listers may not be fascinating, but their stories are consistently the same. Where the people underneath, who are the inventors and the doers,
that's exactly the people
we
go after.
Amazing to find out about.
And that's exactly what we actually say to people, that, you know, we don't go for those A-list people. What we want is the real, authentic people behind these productions that created these ideas, that brought it all to life. It's these people that you've seen their work, but you've never actually met the person. And when you bring the two together, it's just there's a moment within all of us where we go, wow. It's, you know, it's really quite profound. There was a story which we did recently on a gentleman called Alistair Hodgson, and he was fighting the IRA in Northern Ireland. He had his legs blown off by a landmine. Took him 10 years to recover. He said he wanted to be a skydiver after watching Point Break.
Great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think we all did, didn't we?
Well, this is the amazing thing is they fitted him with prosthetic legs. He then went on to find the love of his life, become the first double amputee skydiver in history, and essentially then became 5-time British skydiving champion and 3-time world champion.
When the movie Point Break came out, the one part that really stayed with me was the skydiving scene. And from seeing that scene, I knew from that point that I would be doing that. I didn't know how it was going to happen, and I didn't actually pursue it in any way. But I knew that at one point in my life I would be jumping out of an aeroplane. I had no idea it would take me as far as it has, but it was always there. It was inevitable that I would be a skydiver.
What we did when we interviewed him and told his story, because we've got all of the original people from Point Break, we told his story, interviewed it, and we got all these contributions from the Tom Sanders, who is the aerial cinematographer, Bo Jesse Christopher, who is one of the original ex-presidents from Point Break, all of the original stunt people. And Peter O'Leaf, who actually imagined that world. And I remember talking with Peter, and he was telling me how he actually brought that entire Point Break universe to life. And it was just to be able to tell people's story and then bring in these contributing pieces. It's very special, and this is why with our media, it continues to go around the internet, because it's timeless.
Yeah.
Someone's story is timeless.
Yo, Jason! The Wildside crew, Bo Jesse Christopher here from the Point Break films. I want to wish everybody out there a very happy holiday, a Merry Christmas, a beautiful New Year. Coming to you live from a rainy Huntington Beach, California, almost Christmas afternoon. Just got in a little surf, had a beautiful day, a couple turns in, super fun. Check out the Wildside, tune in, Bo Jesse Christopher. To be continued. Happy holidays. Shaka.
The ultimate rush. Nothing that comes close to
Right, why doesn't everyone innovate? Everyone's got big enough brains, everyone's got, most people in the Western world have the capacity. You only work 50 hours of the 150 plus hours in the week. And it's because they are fearful of throwing themselves at the risk of failure. And I've always thought that, you don't want to go blindly forward, of course, but you do want to make sure that every minute is a captured minute. I always think that we're so lucky to be here in this world, and to not slot something into every available minute. Of course, you've got to sleep for a small amount of it, and you have to eat, unfortunately, and you do have to go to the loo.
You do.
But other than that, you've got to fill every moment with something of purpose. And so people say to us, well, when are you going to have a holiday, or when are you going to take a break? But actually filling something with purpose is a holiday and is taking a break. It's just something's being manifested from it, because a product comes out of the end of it, which you can actually celebrate, acknowledge, and recognize.
And this is the, from all of that creativity and all of that inspiration to actually create, as you guys do, essentially movies that inspire people is such a powerful level to actually be able to produce that from everything that we've discussed, from the inspirations. And now this is your life and this is your career, and that you have a chance to inspire other people with such incredible media is truly remarkable. And as I say, I think, an incredible achievement.
Well, we're trying to. I always want to try and inspire others beyond their own expectation. Definitely. In the workshop. Never deliver to expectation. A client that hires you doesn't want what they think you're going to give them. They want something beyond what they expect. And if you can get your team to deliver to beyond what they saw in themselves when they started, so they're surprised by the results, then you've got something very special.
Definitely.
Cool.
Well, I really appreciate your time to talk today.
Great
It is a
meeting you.
pleasure,
This has
Richard.
been a delight.
Thank you so much. Now, there is one very important question which we always ask all of our supporters. If there was one wisdom or there was one motto which you have, which essentially is the essence of your life, the journey that you've been on and all the experiences that you've had, is there something or a motto or a wisdom that you live by?
Oh, crikey. I always think that you've got to give before you take. This is a collaborative environment, what we do, so you've got to make sure that you're giving of yourself to the team that work with you before you expect to take back from them. Maybe you've got to be a little bit mad to stay sane in this crazy world that we choose to journey through. And you know, the greatest cliche, but never expect of others what you won't do yourself. Very much a person. As you can see, I don't come to work in a suit and sit behind a computer. It's all about leading by example. And if I'm willing to muck in and do it, then probably everyone else is. And that's done us just fine to this point.
Definitely. Well, I really appreciate your time. It is an absolute pleasure to meet with you.
Well, great having you here at Wētā Workshop.
Indeed. So. Thank you so much.
Cool. Cheers to you.
The opportunity to chat with Richard Taylor, one of the original founders of Wētā Workshop, not only about his work and what he's done with some of the most incredible movies that we've all seen, but most importantly about his journey from a child to where he is today, and his inspirations and his heroes is truly a privilege. And we trust that you've enjoyed this interview and discovering the story of Richard as much as we have. Thank you very much for joining us.
Wildside News team. That's extraordinary.